So this is the last session of this 10-week programs. So I shall just try to have a brief look at what we have been discussing so far. Especially the philosophical ideas involved in the second chapter, where the teacher of Gita gives an elaborate description of the characteristics of a spiritual seeker who has reached perfection in meditation. So just a brief synopsis, and then we'll have a discussion. I want to know your views as to the topic that we must discuss in the next sessions. In the second chapter, there are a few verses where the teacher of Gita describes the imperishable, the indestructible nature of Atma, soul or self. Even if we have not reached the experience level explained here, still, even a theoretical understanding of this can help us in the meditative process. See, here, I shall just give a few examples. In the 16th verse of 12th chapter, it's a very famous verse, one of the most important verses, on which the great commentator of Gita, Acharya, whom you may know to be the most prominent exponent of non-dualistic philosophy, has given a very long commentary. It's a very nasado vidyade bhavo na abhavo vidyade sataha ubhayor abhidushtondastu anayogu tattvadarshikhi. This is the verse. I shall give a very rather elaborate description. The verse means this: what is unreal can never come into existence, and what is real can never cease to be. In fact, this is the conviction of all spiritual seekers when they attain spiritual unfoldment. Now, how this conviction, this intellectual understanding can help us in meditative process. Now, first, we may think of the obstacles, different thought currents that may emerge when we try to meditate. Whenever we try to turn our attention inward, suddenly you find mind throws up many conflicting thought currents, which sometimes may be very shocking, sometimes may be very distressing. Now, if you analyze these thoughts, you find most of these thoughts are related to a conviction, a feeling that we are this human body, or mind, or thought currents. Normally, every human being at the beginning of spiritual, cultural, or even philosophical evolution need not be spiritual. According to the degree of refinement of his culture or her culture, that person may think that she or he is the body. And at a still higher level, that person may think himself to be a thinking person. You won't be satisfied. No educated, refined man can be contented or satisfied with food, clothing, etc. With food, of course, animals don't care for clothing. So, if we are satisfied with food and all the basic necessities of life, then we are on the same level with the members of the animal kingdom. Because animals also go for food, they seek food which are necessary for their livelihood. And when it is raining, when it is extreme cold, animals also will try to seek shelter somewhere. So animals won't be able to think and plan to have a solid structure under which it can take protection in rains or cold. But then by instinct, they will seek protection from cold or heat or hunger or thirst. Now a human being who belongs to this level will naturally believe that he will be on the same level with the animal kingdom. Now, again, as the person evolves in cultural evolution, as he or she progresses, in cultural evolution, you find we need certain other elements. We need to read, we want to understand things around us, and we want to increase our comforts. We plan and we try to make use of our knowledge, whatever we know about nature, to improve our tools for enjoyment of physical comforts. And then at a still higher level, a human being may not be satisfied, she or he may not be satisfied with physical comforts. See, there are people, and this is common not necessarily among people who believe in God or religion or spiritual values, even in ordinary human beings, advanced, educated, cultured, refined human beings. They always seek comfort for something else, intellectual comfort. So aesthetics, poetry, philosophy, even a utilitarian who believes that the criterion for judging anything in this world is the amount of pleasure it brings to man or human being. You cannot consider anything to be of any value unless it brings some degree of pleasure, physical pleasure to us. This is a utilitarian view. Even at that level, there is a degree of refinement and aesthetic. There is a degree of sophistication and refinement. Now, at a still higher level, we look for something beyond what we can think of, what is visible, what belongs to the present, what is empirical. Is there something beyond I can see, I can feel, I can touch, I can experience in this world of which I am a part? Then only spiritual inquiry begins. Before that, there is no spiritual inquiry. And when meditation can be meaningful only at this level. If we use meditation just as a relaxation technique, it can soothe our nerves. It can help us to achieve a degree of mental relaxation, peacefulness. But then when there is a crisis, when a problem, then this may not help us. For that we need a solid philosophy of life. Something in which we really believe, which is strong, solid armor, psychological armor we want, a protection, a solid philosophy of life. Now here, in this verse, the teacher of Gita says, there is only one reality in this world, which is imperishable, which is eternal, which could stand the test of time. And that's called in Sanskrit Atman, or in English it is often translated as soul with capital letter S, or self, again capital letter S. It is translated as consciousness, self, Atman and soul. In fact, this is one of the central teachings of Gita. And this is, in reality, this is a state of intuitive, subjective experience. We may not reach this level of experience at the beginning. But if we can try to bring ourselves into a strong conviction that all that we see around, that we experience, are there, but they are not eternal. They are not real in the true sense of the term. I need to explain a few things here, because when we use the word real, it needs a lot of explanation from a philosophical point of view. In Vedantic metaphysics, whenever you use the word real or eternal or everlasting, it has to satisfy certain important criteria. The first criterion is it should be unchanging. Is there anything in the world which doesn't change? According to Buddhist metaphysics, which believes in Kshanabhangavada in Sanskrit, they call, or it's called the doctrine of momentariness. Everything changes. Everything changes because it exists only for one. Kshana means, in fact, it is a shorter unit of time than a second. Now, whatever you see, whatever you experience around, if you can imagine, even if you are a physicist, if you are a scientist, things change. In fact, according to Buddhist philosophy, see, when I say this light or this book, there is a difference between the book which I perceived and the book which I name after perception. When I say this book, the book which I see when I say this book is not the same book which I saw earlier, because every moment things change. This is the Buddhist philosophy. And if you believe in physics, which all of us believe in, we know very well that everything in this world changes. The earth itself is subjected to change. Another important criterion is it should remain the same without any distinction or difference or change in the past, present and future. Which means it should transcend the limitations of time, and it is related to space and also causation. It should not be the effect of anything. There is nothing in this world which is not the effect of something. And then all that we experience in this world is nothing but a series of changes. The earth came into existence maybe some billion years back and may vanish, or it may change into another form after a few billions of years. Total 13.5 or something like this, the duration of earth. Now, if you believe that earth itself to be real, it is not real. Why? Because earth also came into existence sometime in the past. It exists for some billions of years, and it will cease to exist after some billions of years. So the earth has a past, which means it did not exist before it came into existence. If you say it came into existence, what does it mean? It means it did not exist before it came into existence. So there was a time when earth did not exist. So it is not eternal. And anything which comes into existence will cease to exist sometime in future. So what we call existence with relation to all the empirical phenomena is existence within the present. So it is within time. It belongs to time. It comes into existence in time. It exists in time, and it will cease to exist sometime in future. Atman never comes into existence because there was never a time when Atman did not exist. And therefore there will never be a time when Atman will not exist. So it is eternal. Everything else in this world, whether an insect which may live for a few hours, or the earth and the constellation of stars, or the sun or planets, whatever may, the Milky Way, all these may exist for some billions of years, but will certainly cease to exist sometime in future. So these things are not eternal. Why? They had an origin, so they will have a point of dissolution. Now, Atman or Supreme Consciousness is the only reality which is everlasting, which is real. That's why, the Gita says, what is absolutely unreal can never come into existence. And what is absolutely real also cannot come into existence. See the point? What is absolutely unreal cannot come into existence. So the world is called in Vedantic metaphysics as relative or relativity. Which means it exists for some time, but in fact it is not eternal. So you can't say the world is absolutely unreal, but you can never say the world is absolutely real. The only reality, that is capital letter R, the only thing which is absolutely real is Atman. And the world in which we live, of which we are a part, is real only in a relative sense. But Gita says the unreal, the absolutely non-existent can never come into existence. And it also implies the absolute reality also cannot come into existence, because only if it did not exist, it could come into existence. The absolute reality always exists, therefore it cannot come into existence. I hope this point is clear. This is higher metaphysics. What is absolutely real can never come into existence. Why? It always exists. What always exists cannot come into existence. Because coming into existence means birth, which means a transition or change from a state of non-existence into the state of existence. So Gita says Atman is only reality. And we are that Atman, which is perceived only at the intuitive experience level. Now, if one could meditate with a strong conviction that I am the Atman, I am the immanent reality, which is eternal, which is unchanging, then one could always take the position of a witness, because from the standpoint of Atman, everything else is just a fleeting reality, fleeting relative entity. It is not eternal, it is not everlasting. This conviction, according to Gita, is a great help in meditation. So, the idea is this: the unreal with the absolutely unreal can never come into existence. Only the relative can appear to come into existence. The absolutely unreal can never come into existence. And again, much more important point, the absolutely real can never cease to exist. That's a more important part of this verse. That is the 16th verse, one of the most important verse from the non-dualistic Vedantic point of view. In fact, this is the basis of all the four systems of Buddhist philosophy, which is called the two schools of realism called Sautrantika and Vaibhashika, and the two schools of idealism called subjective idealism, is called Vijnanavada, and the doctrine of emptiness, it is called Shunyavada. So if you want to take the verse, we can take the verse 16th verse of the second chapter. In the translation you may read, the translation is very simple, because the word meaning is very simple. The word meaning means the unreal can never come into existence. The unreal, you have to understand what is absolutely unreal, something that we can never even mentally conceive of, intellectually conceive of. See, Vedantic metaphysics give a few examples. Something like, say, the city in the sky, or horn of a hare. Such examples you find in Vedantic metaphysics as examples for the absolutely unreal. You can even mentally you can not even imagine such things as coming to existence. So the unreal can never come into existence. That's a transition. Which means the absolutely unreal can never come into existence. And the real means the absolutely real can never cease to exist. Why? Because the absolutely real always existed, so it never had birth. It never had an origin because it always existed, so it cannot take birth. And therefore, it can never cease to be. This is the view of the philosophers. Now, very often in non-dualistic meditation, even if a student or a practitioner has not reached that level of experience, still this conviction will help you to practice meditation with steadiness. Because whatever happens in this world can be considered to be relative, means it is not absolutely real. This conviction will help you to look upon to look at all the emerging thought currents in the mind from the standpoint of a witness and not a participant. You need not participate in the process of thought currents which are emerging in the mind. We can just look upon them as a witness without being involved in it. Why? Because I am the Atman, I am the consciousness, I am the supreme reality, the self, the supreme consciousness or the eternal soul. Therefore, before me all these things come and go. The whole world is looked upon as something which comes and goes. So, it is not absolutely unreal because it comes and exists for some time. It is not absolutely real because it vanishes. This is the central philosophy of the non-dualistic system of thought, which if in Vedantic meditation, if you can practice, it will help you a solid foundation, a focus for meditation and the self. Now, again, there is another verse in the 18th verse. This also is very important. The 18th verse says, whatever perishes, whatever comes to an end, whatever gets destroyed are the material things. But the imperishable reality always exists. And in relation to this, we have to look upon the 20th verse, which is very important. Na jayate mriyate va kadajit nayam bhutva bhavidavanam bhuyaha. Ajo nitya shasudoyam purano na hanyade hanyamane sariti. This is the verse in the Gita context. I shall try to translate this in the context of meditative process. The first part of the verse says, this Atman, this consciousness, this reality, it has neither birth nor death. I already explained. And now, it is not something which will cease to be after existing for some time. Because it is beyond birth and therefore it is beyond destruction and it is eternal and therefore it is permanent, it is everlasting. This Atman. These ideas, if we can strongly imprint in our mind, it will help us in meditative process. As I said earlier, all the thought currents which emerge in our mind are related to the relativity, the relative world. Once we understand that this relative world is naturally changing and change is its essential nature, and conflicts and apparent disturbance are their natural characteristics, we will not identify our mind with these conflicting thought currents. This is often prescribed as an important help in the meditative process. Now, in the 22nd verse, there is again an important verse which is related to the human existence. The verse means this. See, when we wear clothes for a long time, they get worn out. Then we discard them. And then we put on new clothes. Similarly, when this body gets worn out, it falls off and we take up on a new body. This is related to the Vedantic concept of rebirth that you are understanding. Vasamsi jirnani yathavihaya navani bhinnani naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani ajnani samyati navani. It's a very important word. In fact, this, if you read some newspapers in India and arbitrary columns, you find when old people die, below you find the verse. This is the verse. It is a very positive verse. You may think it remembers, it reminds us of something unpleasant, death. No. In fact, death is looked upon as a very pleasant, creative crisis, not as something terrible, something scary, something terrifying. In fact, that is the metaphysical content of this verse. It's very important. So when great men like the Mahatma Gandhi, when their deaths are remembered in newspaper, arbitrary columns, you find this verse is imprinted. Vasamsi jirnani yathavikaya navani grinadi naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani devi. This is a verse. The verse means this: when you feel that this old cloth is no more fit for wearing, you discard them and you put on a new cloth. So also, this individual soul, when this body gets too worn out, throws away this body and gets a new body, which is related to the theory of reincarnation. So, death is not the end of the journey of human existence. That is the central message of this verse. Death is not the end of human journey. Death is a positive, creative crisis. It is not something terrifying. Why? Because it helps us to discard all sense of fear. All feeling of fear can be discarded if we can believe that we are the Atman, the Supreme Consciousness, which is wearing this body. So, generally, Swami Vivekananda in one of his speeches used to say, in Vedantic metaphysics, we believe that we are a soul which has got a body. But those who do not believe in Vedanta may think we are a body which has got a soul. If you think we are a body which has got a soul, it means this body is eternal, which has got soul, changing soul. So it is not that. The soul is eternal and the soul goes on changing the body. So what we are the soul, the Atman, the Supreme Consciousness, which is eternal, unchanging. And all that happens to this body, to this world around us, are nothing but the natural characteristics of anything which is relative. In the old meditative practices of the Hinayana Buddhism, it is called, Theravada Buddhism. It's not related to the theory of momentariness. Sorry, theory of emptiness. It is related to the earlier, the more orthodox form of Buddhist meditation, which is very prominent in Sri Lanka, Burma, and a few countries like that. It is called Hinayana Buddhism, which gives more importance to ascetic practices. Now, among them there is a strong conviction that if through meditative process, if you can transcend the feeling that you are this body, then one can reach the state of Tathagata or Arhata, Buddha. You can get spiritual enlightenment. Because the verse says, it is the conviction, the feeling that we are just this human body. That is the greatest stumbling block in spiritual life and also in the practical process of meditation. If you believe that we are this body, then all the problems will come. Then the smallest distraction will appear to be a great crisis, a great obstacle, insurmountable obstacle. Because all obstacles, all distractions come at the bodily level. The moment you can convince yourself of the fact that you are something beyond the body, then bodily distractions will never take our mind away from it. Just think of it, we are something other than this body, other than the mind, the supreme consciousness. And if we sit, you find that we can sit steadily. With small distractions, either even a hand bites at you on the neck, if you can feel that I am not this body, at least for some time, for a minute, if you can convince yourself, you can go beyond this thing. You won't be affected. And not only that, in meditative practice, in ancient Vedantic tradition and also in the Buddhist tradition, they insist that you have to sit straight. I have already explained this when I explained the earlier verses. See, Samankaya Sirogrivam Dharayan Achalam Sthiraha Samprekshana Swam Dishascha Anavaloka. I have already explained this many times earlier. You have to sit with your body, neck and head straight and so on. Of course, without the support of a chair, that you have to remember. You should sit on a seat which doesn't have a back support for the back. Now, very often when we meditate, two types of distractions could emerge. One from the point of view of the body and another from the point of view of mind. One may feel fatigued, so we feel like moving in one direction, or sometimes the body moves, or we shake the body, we feel fatigued. Now suppose we could convince ourselves, I am something beyond this body. Then you find you can withstand the bodily fatigue. You will be aware of bodily fatigue, the exhaustion. You won't feel the need to shake your body or change in one direction or other. So, here, the Gita says, this body is something which comes and goes. It doesn't mean that you should have a most negative or cynical attitude. That is not the attitude. So, it should be understood very clearly. Vedanta is very positive. Vedanta doesn't ask you to be indifferent, to be negligent towards the needs of the human body, psychophysical system. What Vedanta tells again and again is that we are something beyond this body. That's all. We are something beyond this body, mind and intellect. Now, this conviction, if we can at least mentally repeat in our mind this fact, or if we can renew this idea mentally or intellectually by reading these words again and again, and then practice meditation, you find we are able to meditate with a higher degree of steadiness. Body will sit erect. Because it is a mental vibration which causes the body to shake. If mind is steady, body also remains steady. So this is an important point. Transcending the body level. This again, for a meditative practitioner, at the beginning, this is an ideal that he or she should keep in mind as an aid to meditative process, so that he can keep his mind and body intact and steady. For an advanced spiritual practitioner, it is a matter of experience. The same idea, what should be one's attitude towards one's body. It's stated here in the 23rd verse, Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam jaghati pavakaha, na chainam kledayanti apo, na shoshayati maritaha. If you got that book, you can remember 23rd verse of the 2nd chapter. The meaning is simple. This Atman is imperishable. It is just a description or an explanation of an earlier idea. This Atman is imperishable, weapons cannot cut it, fire cannot burn it, water cannot make it wet, and wind cannot dry it. And then it cannot be burned, it cannot be wetted, it is eternal, it is all-pervading, and it is subtle. This idea goes. Again, the next verse says, if you think this Atman to be something beyond this body, and if you think yourself to be this Atman, then meditation becomes easy. On the other hand, if we consider ourselves to this human body, then all bodily elements will come. This strong philosophy acts as an armor plate in day-to-day life situations against obstacles and problems. Because Gita asserts again and again that one important root cause of all problems is the wrong notion that we are nothing other than this body. The moment we convince ourselves of the fact that we are something beyond this psycho-physical mechanism, then we transcend this body. It is given as an important explanation. Now, there is another important verse in the 32nd verse of the 2nd chapter. That is this: how we must look upon our duties and activities. That is also, it's related to day-to-day life. When we meditate, as I said earlier, the memories related to our previous actions will often come to the surface. Therefore, we need to have a healthy, positive understanding, attitude towards our actions. So Gita says that one should have a very positive attitude towards our duties and responsibilities. And this is possible only by remaining in a mental attitude of non-attachment. Whatever comes our duty, comes as a duty we must perform. We must not be attached either to work or absence of work. That's the point which Gita stresses. One should not be attached to work, should not be attached to inertia or laziness. The famous verse, Karmaneva adhigaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalahetu bhuku ma te sangostu akarmani. The verse I am just quoting for your reference if you are interested. The idea is this: we should not be attached to work. Work is something that comes naturally, which we can't avoid. At the same time, one should not become indifferent towards duties and responsibilities. After finishing this topic, we have got 15 minutes, and I want to deal with some other important topic. That is the 16th chapter. Lord Krishna gives an analysis of human characteristics. Somebody raised a question related to this, so I would like to explain this in some details here. Here, the teacher of Gita makes a general statement that broadly speaking, human characteristics belong to two different categories. One, positive human characteristics which are helpful for spiritual life, and the negative human characteristics which are detrimental for spiritual life. In the chapter you find Daiva, Asuri, Sampat, Vibhaga Yoga. The meaning is this: a chapter deals with two types of human characteristics, the divine, or let's say the human, and the demoniac, means the evil characteristics. By doing good deeds, by thinking good thoughts, and by trying to divert our senses and mind into creative channels, one could try to improve one's own spiritual equilibrium by accumulating divine characteristics. The first verse is this, the first verse of the 16th chapter. Abhayam satta samshuddhihi jnana yoga vyavasthidihi dhanam dhamasya yajnascha swadhyayastapa archavam ahimsa satyam akrodastyaga shantirapaisunam daya bhudeshu aloluptam madhavam hrihi achapalam, etc. A number of characteristics are given here. First one is fearlessness. Fearlessness is possible only by transcending bodily level, because it is the feeling that we are this human body that creates all fear. But this fear from disease, fear from enemies, fear from possible dangers, all are related to the feeling that we are this body. Because all anxieties, all worries are related to the one central problem. The problem is the wrong notion that we are this body. Therefore, to get out of this fear and to achieve this quality of fearlessness, one should try to impress upon ourselves again and again that we are something beyond this body, mind and intellect, something imperishable. If you have got the book, you can look at the first verse of 16th chapter. The first quality is fearlessness. Now again, next one is purity of heart, steadiness of mind, word and deed. If we could keep our mind, word and deed in a straight line, it is called purity of heart in Vedanta. All impurity is related to some imbalance or confusion. When we speak something, deliberately means something different, and our action something altogether different. This is impurity. It's a very psychologically very rational analysis. So if one could establish himself or herself in purity of heart, his word, his deed, and his thoughts, mental, verbal, and intellectual, or action-oriented activities will be on the same line. That's purity of heart. Steadfastness in knowledge and devotion. This, of course, if you are interested in the Jnana Yoga, one should keep a steadfast devotion to Vedanta. Or if you are a devotee of God, you must have sincere, pure devotion to God. These are some of the noble qualities. Then benevolence. All these are interrelated. Then control of the senses. Control of the senses, that's the meaning, that's the word used here. Meaning have the senses under full control. As I said earlier, you cannot just control the senses forcibly. The idea is to divert the senses towards creative, constructive channels. That's the idea behind it. Senses naturally see different objects. So all senses should be diverted towards creative channels. And then study of scriptures, of sacred scriptures, then spiritual practices, then austerity. Austerity is again an attempt to transcend the bodily level. Because one could practice austerity only if he or she thinks that she or he is beyond the body, and uprightness. Again, next is given no ahimsa satyam. Ahimsa means non-violence. Ahimsa, in practical sense, it means love or understanding, broad-mindedness towards all. Ahimsa is not just the absence of violence, it is a full-fledged philosophy of life. It is a mental, intellectual attitude. So, one who is established in the ideal of non-violence will have all these qualities, will be pure in heart, will be benevolent, will be upright, and will have a broad-minded outlook towards all people. Then Satya, truthfulness, that is again related to the earlier quality we already mentioned. Sattva Shuddhi means purity of heart, means mind, word and deed in a straight line. That is the meaning here. And then Akrodha means freedom from anger. Anger is due to either greed or violent nature or impurity of heart. And then peace, a peaceful attitude. Compassion to all living beings. Gentleness, modesty, freedom from sensuality, and steadfastness. Again, some other qualities are given here. Tejakshama thridi saujam adroho natimanida bhavanti sampadam devim abhijadasya bharata. If one could read these verses or think of these verses and try deliberately to develop these qualities, meditative practice becomes easy. Again, vigor, should not be lazy, should have patience. Sometimes when you meditate, when horrible thoughts, shocking thoughts, conflicting thoughts will emerge in the mind, suddenly you feel like getting up and going away. Every time we feel, well, meditation is such a disturbing process. So one may procrastinate or postpone. One should not do that. You should have patience, fortitude, all these are related qualities. And then freedom from vanity. These are some of the qualities, harmlessness, purity, etc. After outlining these qualities which every spiritual seeker should develop, the teacher of the Gita gives a brief outline of some of the drawbacks which one should avoid. Some of the what he called demoniac characteristics. Dambho darpo abhimanascha krodha parushamevacha ajnanam cha abhijadasya partha sampadam asuri. I should explain this very simple. First evil characteristic is pretentiousness. Means trying to have a very high opinion of our own spiritual advancement, development. This is something which become an obstacle in spiritual life. Because in spiritual life, and there is a great danger that is pointed out by Patanjali and also commentators on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And this, if you have practiced meditation, you may have experienced this. After practicing meditation and spirituality for some time, we sometimes we delude ourselves into the notion. We start feeling that we are pretty advanced in spiritual life. This feeling comes. Sometimes, we get the feeling, and this is natural. But Patanjali and other great psychologists, Vedanta psychologists, have explained this, and this is a great stumbling block. We sometimes get the feeling that we are quite advanced in meditative practices. This is to be avoided. So pretentiousness, arrogance, pride, wrath, rudeness, all these qualities. Very often, some of these qualities may emerge as a result of spiritual practice. We need not be surprised or shocked, but if you are aware of all this, one could avoid all this. The feeling comes, we are quite advanced in spiritual life. This feeling comes. 2 types of obstacles are mentioned in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. There are 5 types are mentioned, but the most important. One is the feeling, the wrong notion that we are progressing very fast. The other danger is the feeling that we are not making any progress at all. Both are equally dangerous. One possibility is that we may feel that we are progressing very fast. Another possibility is that cynical, negative, just the opposite of it, that we are not making any progress. Both should be avoided. That's the idea behind here. I'm trying to analyze these characteristics which I mentioned in the 16th chapter in the context of a spiritual seeker who tries to meditate. So pretentiousness and arrogance, pride, wrath, rudeness and insensitiveness to spiritual values. Sometimes we become callous, indifferent, a stony outlook. Very often practice of austerity can create this problem. In many meditative books you can find, if you practice austerity, meditation, sometimes we become so self-oriented that we become insensitive towards the problems, some of the problems faced by other fellow human beings. Because when we try to turn ourselves inward, sometimes we become insensitive towards the world outside. This is also one of the problems which spiritual seeker may have to face. Now, what are the attitudes to be avoided? In the 8th verse you find, Lord Krishna says that people endure with these cynical, negative characteristics which are harmful to spiritual life. We have a very negative attitude towards everything in this world. They believe that there is nothing real in this world. In fact, one important characteristic mentioned in all books is they believe that matter is only reality. That is the characteristic of people who are endowed with these demoniac characteristics. Those who are not established in truthfulness, non-violence, and all these divine characteristics, we believe that matter is only reality. And once you believe matter is only reality, we also will believe the body is only reality. The body is made of the matter. The world also is made of the matter. If the physical world is only reality, then correspondingly we believe the body is also the only reality. And once we believe that this body is the only reality, then the smallest obstacle, bodily obstacle, whether it heat or cold, if the place where you are sitting is too cold, it will become a terrible obstacle. If it is a bit hot, it becomes an obstacle. The smallest bodily obstacle can become a great distraction for the beginner. Therefore, this attitude should be avoided. That's the implication of these statements. I have just given an outline of some of the teachings of the 2nd chapter and the 16th chapter in a general way in relation to the meditative practice. And we will have meditation for half an hour. After that, we will have a long interaction. And I would like to request you to give your views, because we want, this is the last session, and we want to have your response, your responses, your views, kind of feedback. After that, we will decide next subject. So we will have meditation for half an hour.
Swami, what are Nasahiya Suttas? And what are they Similar to Vedanta?
Yes. Nasadiya Sutta it comes in Rigveda Samhita, the 10th mandala. Rigveda Samhita, many of you know, is the oldest and most ancient scripture, maybe in the world, maybe in Vedic tradition. It is divided into 10 groups. Each group is called a mandala. You can get Nasadiya Sutta from one of the translations in the Rigveda Samhita. One of the best translations in English language is by a famous professor of Sanskrit who was teaching in Berkeley University and a few universities in San Francisco. I mentioned him a Vedic Experience. Yeah, I pointed out the book.
Yes.
Author's name, remember?
Yes.
Yes. Raimondo Panikar. He was a famous Vedic scholar. Those of you who are interested in philosophy and metaphysics and in physics proper, you can read that book. It is called, in English, it is called Creation of Him. I mean, in Sanskrit, it is called Srishti Suktam. It is an ancient Sanskrit verse which explains the mystery of creation of the universe. It says, Nasadasi, no sadasi, tadanim. That's how it begins. In the beginning, there was neither existence nor non-existence. This is how it begins. In the beginning, there was neither existence nor non-existence. Na asadas, asad means non-existent. No sat means existence. So what was in the beginning? Existence here means manifestation of the subtle in gross form. So this universe of this world is described as the manifestation of the subtle in gross form, as the manifestation of the invisible in visible form. So in the beginning there was neither manifestation nor is absence. Now manifestation of the relative, of the absence of the relative. In the beginning there was neither the visible world nor was there its absence. Because the absence and presence can be applied only in relation to something relative. Don't you think so? You can say this book exists. You can say this book doesn't exist. But the absolute reality of the Atman or the consciousness is something which cannot be described as existence in the sense in which we say the world exists. It means it never had an origin. It never had an origin. And therefore it never had an origin. It can never have a death. If there is something which cannot have an empirical existence, then it cannot have a non-existence in empirical. Is a description of an ancient rishi who goes in search of the final cause, the origin of the universe. Sato bandhum asadi niravindan kridik pradishya kavayo manisha. So that means the ancient rishi went in search of the final cause of existence. And then he went on searching in the external world. He could not discover the final cause, the root cause of the world. Then he turned his inquiry inward, means he meditated. Then he found the root cause, the final cause of the universe, which he was searching outside, is actually his own inner self. So, Sato Bendhum Asadi Niravindan Kriti Pradeshya Kavyo Manisha. Please don't mind my quoting this sutta, because these are ancient Vedic mantras which must have taken its present form maybe 4,000, 5,000 BC. if you take a most modern view. So, this mantra says, the ancient sages who went in search of the final cause of the universe, just as modern physicists go in search of the final cause of the universe, or at least they are looking for an explanation, the mystery of creation. Of course, they are making this inquiry in the external world. And then the ancient sages discovered the root cause, the origin of the universe. Sattva Bindu means Jagataha Karana, that is Sanskrit, means the final cause of the universe, the final cause, the mystery of creation. And then he discovered where within himself. When his mind became pure, his inquiry turned inward, and which means he meditated. When he meditated, he realized that the real cause of the universe doesn't lay outside of himself. It is his own Atman. So this is called Srishti Suktam of the hymn of creation called. Now, it begins with an inquiry. In fact, Nasadiya Sutta is exclusively non-dualistic, pure non-dualism. Though it is called the hymn of creation, in the process, the method it employs. First, the sage comes down to our level, the level of the common people who think this world is real. You ask anybody in this world, for anyone, any ordinary people, world is real. And then he takes you with step by step, and he describes to you the world around us. When he describes it, he finds the world, so-called world, is really only a relative entity. Its final cause is within ourselves, is the immanent divine principle which exists in everything in this world. That is the famous sutta. It is called Nasadiya Sutta. You can read, those of you who are interested in philosophy or spiritual life, it's a sublime, one of the most sublime poetical creations in the world. It comes in the 10th mandala. Those of you who are interested may look for a book. For the book's name is, Vedic Experience. That's the English title. It's a translation into English of Rigveda Samhita, in which this verse comes. Translator is Raimundo Panikkar. He was a famous Christian Catholic priest who passed away when he was almost more than 90 years old. He spent his whole lifetime for studying Sanskrit and Vedas. And I think the first edition was published from University of Berkeley. So if you read Vedic Experience, if you look into the computer, Google, you read it.
I have a technical question about the Gita, but I think it pertains to practical spiritual life. You concentrated tonight on the 2nd and the 16th chapter. And in essence, it is, as most scriptures you've described, it describes what is not real. It's not real. It's not real. As a process.
16th chapter deals with the characteristics. 16th verse of the 2nd chapter, I hope you know.
Yes, yeah, right.
16th verse of the 2nd chapter.
Yeah.
Nasado Vidyate Bhava.
But what I mean is, you describe what is not, the process is deciding what is not real, and coming to the real.
Yes.
Now, and the reality is something that's beyond the mind.
Beyond the mind, yes.
Now, ordinarily, our life is guided by our emotions. I mean, I see something, I want it, or I am repulsed by it. So, but there's something that is beyond the mind, how do I apply my emotions to want that something which is beyond the mind? I don't see it. It is very abstract, and yet my ordinary process of doing something or achieving something is the emotional drive that I want something. But this is something that I can't see or imagine, so how do I want it?
Vedantics, of course, this is true in Patanjali Yoga Sutra also. See, they talk about sublimation of emotions. By sublimating emotions, we can go beyond the clutches of emotions. Give a spiritual orientation to our emotions. Whatever feelings, whatever taste, whatever interest we have got, give a spiritual orientation. That's one way. Spiritual orientation means, of course, that will take us to devotional philosophy. In fact, devotion is nothing but the art of sublimating human emotions. But in Vedanta, they have a different approach. See, emotions are always related to mind. Emotions emerge as a result of the interaction between mind and objects in the empirical world. Now, and emotions do arise, but we identify ourselves with these emotions. And therefore we get into trouble. When we identify ourselves with the emotions and we try to act according to those emotions, they create distractions for spiritual life. Now, in Vedanta, even if you have not reached the experience level of this, even as a theory, as a doctrine, if we can believe that this world as we see is not eternal, and we are not this body or mind, we are something beyond this. This constant remembrance will help us to escape from identifying ourselves with the emotions. Emotions do arise, but we can avoid identifying ourselves with these emotions. So we can look at these emotions as a witness, without being involved, without becoming participants. Then emotions will stop becoming a great hindrance in spiritual life. It is our identification with our emotions that become distractions. They do arise. See, one very great Swami who worked in different countries abroad, and somebody raised a question, he passed away. He answered, when emotions and conflicting thought currents come to you when you meditate, you ask, alright, you also sit, I am sitting here for meditation, you emotions, you also sit with me for meditations. So you give them another seat next to you, you also sit there for meditation, you suggest the emotions, then emotions won't be a problem. When you try to fight with emotions, or when you pamper your emotions, both are dangerous. If you fight with your emotions, they chase you. If you act according to your emotions, if you allow yourself to be pampered by your emotions, then also they will enslave you. So you tell emotions, all right, I am meditating, you also sit here and meditate, let us meditate. Then emotions will, this man is inaccessible, better won't disturb him. Because, of course, you put in a very humorous way. It means, it is called weakness method. I am not participating in the drama of emotions. I am just watching, sitting maybe on the front row. But I am not playing in and I have no role in the drama. Then emotions won't be a big problem. That's from Vedantic standpoint. But if you are in the habit of praying, if you are in the habit of reading devotional scriptures, then you try to give a Godward or spiritual orientation to these emotions. See, both are equally effective. From Vedantic point of view, it is very, very, very rational and not very difficult. You see, we identify with emotions only if a corresponding feeling exists in our mind. Otherwise, we don't identify. You don't do that. So, this corresponding emotion in our mind can be stopped and can be prevented from linking itself with the external objects by either asking the emotions, well, I have nothing to do with you, but I don't fight with you, you also sit and meditate, and I am also sitting meditation. So, in a way, he was just underlining the attitude of total non-attachment with emotions. Witness, you should be a witness, not a participant. That's the idea.
Swami, if I can ask another question. Why not Ajatvada included in Vedanta?
Oh, Ajatavada. See, I shall explain. Ajatavada, it is a famous doctrine, the doctrine of non origination of the world. That's how it is called. According to Vedanta, its final word, it is explained in a famous book called Gaudapada Karika. Those of you who have access to this book, to Mandukya Upanishad is the text. There is a commentary on Mandukya Upanishad. It is called Gaudapada Karika, means a commentary. There, Gaudapada was a pre-Shankarite philosopher who lived in 6th century AD. Gaudapada is part of Advaita. Shankaracharya, the main difference between Shankaracharya's Advaita and Gaudapada's Advaita is Gaudapada speaks from the standpoint of the last word, the conclusion, which is Ajatavada. Shankaracharya's system, on the other hand, it is a highly complex, very compact, a complete metaphysical edifice, of which the doctrine of non-origination is the last word. Gaudapada, his role was limited. His contribution was that he projected this Ajatavada, which was already explained in the earlier Advaitic books like Adhyatma Ramayana, Yoga Vasishtha, etc., into Mandukya Karika. But Shankaracharya accepts this. But Shankaracharya gives it its proper place. So, the doctrine of non-origination of the universe is the last word. The main tenet, main philosophical idea of the doctrine of non-origination of the universe is the world is non-existent. Why? Gaudapada doesn't accept the relative reality of the relative. According to mainstream Advaita of Shankara, this world is relatively real because we live in this world. We experience this world. We are part of this world. So the world is real, but not absolutely real. It is relatively real. Now, the difference between the absolutely unreal and the relative is experienced only at the relative level. From the absolutist point of view, there is no distinction between the relative reality and the absolute unreality. From the absolute point of view, the relative reality and the absolute unreality are the same. But from a relative point of view, there is a difference between the absolutely unreal and the relative. See, in parallel to this, Gaudapada makes an interesting theory. He gives an interesting theory. He says dream and waking state are the same. Dream and waking state are the same from the highest point of view. I know many of us should be ready to be shocked. According to our highest Advaita, dream experience and waking experience are actually equally unreal. Why? I shall give an example. Suppose you live for 90 years and if you sleep for 8 hours a day, you will have 60 years of waking experience life, and 30 years of dream, let us say. do you think that you are living only for 60 years? You are living for 90 years. So that means you include your dream experience, your sleeping experience in the lifespan. But in normal life, we don't equate waking experience with the dream experience. The only difference is you slept only for 30 years, but you experienced waking experience for 60 years. But it's a matter of relative difference in time. So, and again another point is, for a dreamer, somebody who is dreaming, dream experience is real. You ask a dreamer, a man who is in dream, even if he's dreaming and he's playing football, if he'll be running in the streets of San Francisco, everything is real. If I got from his standpoint of view, whatever he experiences in waking state are unreal. Just as dream experiences are unreal for normal people in waking state experiences are unreal from the standpoint of somebody who is dreaming. You ask a dreamer, he says waking experiences are not real because his experience of waking state doesn't exist in dream. In dream only dream experiences exist. So for a dreamer, dream experiences are real, waking state experiences are unreal. For somebody in waking state, waking experiences are real, dream experiences are unreal. That means each is cancelled by other. So what difference is there? 30 years dream experience, 60 years waking experience. You include in both. You include 90 years of lifespan. So Gaudapada says there is no difference. Of course, he admits differences. See, in dream, it takes only split second for you to travel to New York from here. But in waking state, it's 6 hours. And you dream, you go to sleep here in Olema, and you dream that you are East London. So there is difference with regard to time, space. And dream experiences are subtle because you may fly on an elephant back, but an elephant cannot exist in the small room where you're sleeping. So, but then you'll be running in the streets of San Francisco in dream, but your legs are not moving, your eyes are closed, room is in pitch dark, but you are walking in the streets of San Francisco under the burning sun. So, but then where is the sunlight? Where is the act of running? All mental level. But dream experiences are only mental projections. Waking experiences are related to mind and senses of action, senses of perception.
Dreams are irrational.
Dreams are irrational from the standpoint of waking state. For a dreamer, waking state is actually wrong. For a dreamer, waking state is wrong. For a dreamer, dream experience is reality.
Amazing.
So Gaudapada says, we are discussing all this in our old temple. Every Friday we have a class. So every Friday, we are, for the last several weeks, we are discussing this Upanishad and Acharya. This is Sanskrit text. We are explaining in English. So dream experiences are absolutely as real as waking experiences are real for somebody who is in waking state. So 3 differences: time difference, space difference, and subtle gross difference. Well, but these differences are there, but still you find both are equally unreal. See, both can be accepted as real only if dream experiences are experienced to be real in waking state. Then dream experiences are real, but it's not the case. We don't consider dream experiences as real. Now we are waking state. But during dream state, waking experiences are unreal. We don't have waking state experiences in dream. So there is a subtle, inseparable link between dream state and waking state, because we can never have a dream without some link to our waking state experience. Nobody in this world can have any dream without some link, some relationship with waking state experience. In waking state, you fly in a plane. In dream, you may be flying on an elephant back. But the idea of an elephant and the idea of flying are put together in dream state. So it is projected, mind projects as flying on an elephant back. These are all described in ancient philosophical works. So I've given just a brief outline. So the point is, Ajatavada is an inseparable part of Advaita. But Shankaracharya was a huge ship. He had to take thousands of passengers across the river. So you know what happened? And animals, vehicles, trucks, cars, all can be accommodated in a huge ship. So Shankaracharya had to provide, he had to give provision for students of all levels of philosophical evolution. So he gave a compact, complete, huge edifice of philosophy, of which Gaudapada touches only the top floor. The last concluding word Gaudapada says. But that is an inseparable part of Advaita. I am not including that here because that is the last word in Advaita. It's not proper to discuss unless when we are discussing that particular technical work as we are doing in Old Temple, San Francisco, every Friday from 7:30 to 9 o'clock. Every Friday. I think we are... Now, yes.
Would you mind spelling that word that you're saying, Gaudapada?
Gaudapada, oh yes. Gaudapada. Karika is K-A-R-I-A. You can have this book from our San Francisco bookstore, and also those who are interested in the Now I want to discuss something much more important. That is, this is the 10th session of this program, and we have a plan to continue this program. Of course, not on Tuesdays. We are planning to switch over to Saturdays, weekend. That will be more convenient to many students, many of friends. That's what I was told. So I think we will just switch. You can have your suggestions on this subject.